Hey everybody, good afternoon. It's a little before 2. I just want to thank everybody for stopping in today, and hopefully we can drop a little bit of knowledge your way. We are going to go live with a presentation here in just a few minutes. Operating on a little bit of a reduced crew today. Producer Quint is off to the side celebrating Good Friday, and so I'm going to be running a little bit solo. Hopefully, fingers crossed, everything goes okay. If you have any questions during the presentation, please don't hesitate to hit the Facebook message, and I will see them here live. I'll answer back to you if it's appropriate, or we'll save them for the end. After we are finished and we've made the presentation, I have a couple of announcements at the end. Be happy to stick around for a few minutes and just kind of an open mic question and answer if you guys have run into any issues or questions. Doesn't have to be travel related, long as it's photography related. We'll sit around and, like I said, text me your questions, and we'll hit all of those live at the end. Okay. So we're just going to hang tight for a few minutes, and then we will get rolling. Starting to see some regular names. It's kind of cool that you guys are following along and having a good time with this. I hope you're having a good time with this. One of the things that I would like some feedback on after we're done today, or again by direct message, is I need to come up with another few weeks worth of presentations. So if you've got a specific thing that you'd like me to talk about, I might already have a class for it. If not, I certainly can develop a class and put together a presentation. If it's on sports photography, if it's on more in depth on lighting or other travel, we can sit around and share pictures. Maybe we move this onto Zoom and can do some other things that way. I'm open to whatever suggestions that you guys may have. So we're going to give it a few more minutes and we're going to get rolling. This is going to be on travel photography, and one of the things when people ask me about this class that I tell them is, in some ways, it's kind of a myth-busting class. As photographers, and of course as a sales guy, my job is to sell you everything in the store, and that's not always the case with travel. My philosophy about travel photography is sometimes a little bit less is more, and making sure that you really understand your gear. So maybe you're not traveling with a whole 30 or 40 pounds worth of gear and dragging along only the necessary stuff. And so that's some of the things that we'll get into. We'll talk about being able to back up on the fly. I think I've got a couple of slides in here about some simple editing and things like that you can do as well. So hope along, pull up a chair, grab a snack, grab a beverage, and we can get started. And if Producer Quint will hit the button, and we will get rolling. Alright, let's get started. So this is on travel photography is what we're talking about today. And we're going to talk about tips, we're going to talk about gear, and we're going to talk about techniques. And so one of the things that we got to talk about first off is how to make this successful and fun. So what we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about gear, obviously. Hey, we're photographers, we have to have gear. We're going to talk about my philosophy, which is kind of making do with what you have, and not necessarily bringing along the entire gear closet, but taking along just what you need, and learning about your gear really maybe a little bit more in depth, so that you can learn and realize for yourself what high megapixel and high resolution cameras can do for you, and using that to your advantage to be able to, again, carry less stuff. We'll talk about some lens options and some all-in-one solutions. We'll talk about carrying a big bag versus a small bag, some minimalist and even some mobile options to make it, which I think are legitimate options to maybe a second camera sometimes. And I'll tell you, I'll give you some points about that. We're also going to talk about storytelling and about where you ate and who you met, and local color and how that tells the story. We're going to tell you about where to find the place. Maybe you're going to go to Morocco for the first time, and you don't know the cool places and the photogenic places to visit Morocco. And some sources like Instagram and Google and TripAdvisor are great sources for that kind of information, so that you don't roll into a brand new place blind. And like I said, lastly, we're going to talk about editing. We're going to learn about in-camera tweaks and tell you kind of where to look for things like that. We're going to talk about paying attention to the whole picture to reduce your editing time. We're going to talk about, and these are conversations that you have to have yourself, what's the end result and how much do you want to edit? Are you taking these photos just to live on the Instagram, or are you taking these photos to put them up on the wall? And maybe your approach to your equipment, your shooting, your camera settings may all vary a little bit depending on what your end result is. And I'll give you a very specific personal example about that, which, well, anyway, we'll leave it at that. I'll just give you a specific example about that. And then we'll talk a little bit about mobile editing and getting through that to help sort of tell your story a little bit. So the first question you want to ask yourself before you head out for this trip: what do you want to carry? If you just want to travel super light and carry your cell phone, there's nothing wrong with that. Again, as a photographer, I used to get the heebie-jeebies when people would tell me that, but with improvements in technology and improvements in features and accessories even that you can get for your cell phone, I am a definite true believer that this can be a legitimate mobile imaging device to help capture your travel adventures. If you want to take this and maybe dress it up a little bit, we'll talk about lenses and accessories that you can do for that, and you can live with that. If you want to carry the whole suite of 68 lenses from Canon, that's cool too. And I'm going to tell you more about that picture in the center as we go along. You're going to see that picture a few times through this presentation. So one of the things we're going to talk about is, like I said, we can't talk about travel, we can't talk about cameras without talking about gear. So I'm going to throw this solution out for you. A lot of you watching maybe have bought a camera with a kit lens set, maybe like an 18 to 55 and a 55 to 200, something like that, and that's perfectly fine. But if you want to travel a little bit lighter, you don't want to switch lenses in the middle of the street, you don't want to have the wrong lens on at the wrong time, looking at one of these all-in-one lenses is a great choice. So our friends at Tamron make an 18 to 400. There are 16 to 300s. Each of the manufacturers has something in this range. And so the advantage of an all-in-one lens is just that. You're not switching. You have everything with you. So it's super convenient. You have a long range. You're not changing lenses. You're not getting dust or grunge into your camera. So there's a lot of advantages to going with this all-in-one lens. Now the downside is right there, like we say at the bottom. It's not great in low light. So if you're accustomed to shooting always fast glass and f2.8 glass and L lenses and 1.4 primes, this might not be a good answer for you because it is not a lens that's going to be super awesome in low light. Now that I've just said that, one of the things that you need to realize, and we talk about this later, is learning how good your camera performs in low light. We're going to talk about that again, and perhaps you can balance the convenience of that all-in-one with some higher ISOs maybe than what you're accustomed to shooting with. And so we're going to hit that in a few minutes. But this will give you an idea of the range. These shots were all taken with the same lens from the same spot, and you've got that huge range. So no changing, nothing like that. You're not going to miss very many shots. So as a piece of good travel gear, you're going to have to realize that I have a misspelling in my quote, and I apologize for that. But generally speaking, for travel photography, a lot of people find that that extra range outweighs the limitations in terms of price and low light capability. Now, if you do want to keep some of your low light features, considering adding a prime lens to your bag instead. So again, you're not getting to huge huge weight or huge size, but if you prefer to shoot portraits with wide, maybe keep that 50 millimeter and add a 50 to your all-in-one set. If you're a landscape photographer, maybe add something a little bit wider or a little bit faster. You're going to get a little bit more weight, but if you're concerned and a little bit on the edge about the low light, add a little prime lens to it and you're good to go, and that fixes your prime lens limitation, your low light limitation. Now if you're a full frame shooter like a Sony 7 series, a Nikon D750, or anything that's in the full frame realm, Canon 5D kits, you have that all-in-one option too. So you maybe have something like a 28 to 300 or a 28 to 400. So you're going to have that same flexibility of the smaller lens that we just looked at, so you're not switching. It's convenient, everything's all in one. It's a little bit bigger lens, but again, it's not huge, and when you balance the convenience and the range, a lot of people like this as a really terrific travel option. If you don't want the limitations, we can look at a kit like this. Now this is from Tamron, and again, oh, hit that slide one more time, too many, I'm sorry. You can have maybe like a 2-lens kit. So this is a pretty cool outfit, and every manufacturer has something like this in their catalog, whether it's Tamron or Sigma or Sony. You can find something similar. So these 2 lenses from Tamron, we have a 17 to 35 and a 35 to 150. They're both 2.8 to 4 lenses, so you're going to gain some speed. They're weather sealed. You're going to have minimal switching. So you have the convenience of an all-in-one, but you just have 2-in-1. But you gain some speed, and you gain some other features too. So this is another option. It's terrific for a full frame shooter who doesn't maybe want the size and weight, but wants to keep with everything being convenient. Now, this is the money no object. I want to hire a Sherpa kind of project. If you are you want no limitations, so you're going to be shooting in low light, you're shooting wide angle, you're shooting long range, you don't want to give up, you don't want to go, oh, if only I had. If that's your jam and you don't mind the weight and you don't mind the cost, this is the ultimate travel kit. Everything, and again, Tamron, Sony, Nikon, Canon, Olympus, Fuji, everyone's going to have a package like this. Typically we call it the Trinity because there's going to be 3 lenses in this kit. You're going to have a fast wide, a fast mid, and a fast telephoto. Now you're shooting without any limitations. Low light into cathedrals and museums and caverns and places like that are no worry. If you want to shoot early morning sunrises and sunsets, no worry. If you're in a position where you need to shoot something at a long distance, you have that covered too. About the only thing you don't have in a Trinity kit is something extra long, maybe if you're shooting wildlife or something like that. And we're going to talk again when we talk about pack in the bag, some things like that. So a Trinity kit, awesome setup. It is an expensive option and it's heavy to carry, and like I joke, you might want to consider hiring a Sherpa if this is your solution. But now that we've looked at, all-in-ones to 3-in-1, no limitations, give you an idea to think about what kind of lenses you want to carry. So I want to show you a real-life example that happened to me a number of years ago. And this is kind of the genesis of not only the travel class, but also my personal, more minimalist approach to what I'm carrying on these kind of adventures. So in 2017, I was fortunate to lead a workshop. Went overseas, took 6 photographers with me, and I was leading and teaching and guiding the entire trip. So as an instructor and a guide, I wanted to make sure that not only did I have everything I might need, but I was wanted to be able to make sure that I had backup gear maybe for some of my students. It turned out we all shot the same brand of camera, and so that was easy for me to do. But this is the night before I left, everything laid out on my sofa, and trying to figure out that I make sure I had everything. So if you look there, I've got 2 bodies with lenses attached. There are 2 other lenses that aren't in the picture. I have got a flash and a flash trigger. I've got some gels for my flash. That particular flash uses a rechargeable battery, so I had a charger for my flash. My wide-angle lens, if you look at the bottom of that slide, is a 15 to 30 Tamron. It takes a specialty filter, so I had this dinner plate sized filter that's about 9 inches wide, and that had some pieces that went along with it. I had a card reader because I'm going to back up my pictures every day. And let's see, what else do I have in there? I had a backup flash because if my main flash broke, I wanted to have another flash. So I had modifiers for my 2 flashes and chargers for my flash. I had a bunch of memory cards. I had 2 straps because I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to carry when, and so I kind of rigged up a double strap along with a hand strap for each camera. If you see the bottom, this is the one I'm a little bit kind of embarrassed by. I took 2 chargers with me. I bought a double charger and I had my standard charger, so I could charge 3 batteries at one time when I got back to the room. It was pretty crazy. And then you see it's upside down up on the top about 1 o'clock. It says Neewer, and those are some graduated filters. We talked about those yesterday in another class, but you know, just some graduated filters, since we might be doing a lot of landscape, and I bought that specifically for this trip. So this was my gear. I'm getting ready to load out, pack up, and get ready to head to the hotel tomorrow. Head to the airport tomorrow, and threw that on my bag and about cried. And so I started. These are the things that I want you to think about when you're traveling and packing for a trip. Taking a messenger bag versus a backpack. Backpacks are great because all day it's on your back, but as you stop and take pictures during the day, you're unloading that backpack each time. I didn't realize that at the time. I mean, I realized it, but not to the extent that I learned on this particular trip. Single or a double strap or a modified custom strap if you want to carry 2 cameras or just 1 camera. Extra batteries and extra chargers. Cards and storage while I'm on the fly. My lay-low plate is not in there. It's a super low flat plate to be able to mount without carrying a tripod. Got to clean and maintain my gear too, so you know I've got lens cloths and things like that carrying along with me. Here's the bottom line. That last slide, that last paragraph there. Pack appropriately. If I'm going to go to Africa and go on a safari, I'm going to pack differently for that trip than I would maybe for a street trip or an architectural trip or a landscape trip. So you run these questions and maybe checklist off to yourself what you need, what you really need for this trip. And here's the slide that is going to kind of bring it out here. Let's let this pull up. And this is what I actually used. So the thing I needed the least were my 2 flashes and my chargers for my flashes. Over 5 days, I took 1 flash photograph, but I carried them with me every day. I also I had 5 extra batteries plus a battery in each camera, so I had a total of 7 batteries. I never went through a day where I went through more than 2, and of course I could charge 3 at a time. So I was way overboard on batteries and chargers. And of course, with not using the flash, that also meant I did not use my flash remote, my flash gels, my flash recharger. So guess what? Those didn't make the cut. That Neewer set of super cool grad filters, I never used them. Never took them out of the bag. I carried them with me for 3 days, and on the last 2, I left them at home because I never went through them. Matter of fact, they're still in the case, and I don't think I've touched them since. The most important thing, you see right there, it's a non-photography piece. It's a extension cord, because I will promise you, and if you've done any bit of traveling with electronic gear, and I'm sure we all have, and we will again, between being able to charge a phone, maybe a laptop or a tablet, chargers for your camera, chargers for everything else, I don't know that there's a motel room alive that's ever been built that has enough charge space. Or they're all USB charge ports, and so they charge super slow. That extension cord lives in my camera bag. It never comes out. And I have never I never run into a spot now where I don't have one. So think about truly what you have to take for this trip and pack appropriately. That's my biggest thing, is to make sure that you pack appropriately for it. So here's a shot that took on that trip, and you see that huge pile of gear. This is a shot from that trip. Over the course of 2 days, it turned into simply a messenger bag and a single camera. My second lenses were on my side, my flash was in my side, my second body I wore outside for a couple of days, and then I ended up stashing that in the bag as well. So from a big heavy backpack with everything in it, this is how I traveled through the streets for 5 days. And we shot everything. We shot landscapes, we shot in the street, we shot portraits. I never really was at a loss for anything. I was never disappointed with the gear that I had. So that minimalist approach, what that did for me is it kept me in the moment. In other words, I was experiencing where I was and what I was doing, not fumbling with gear and changing from one lens to another to another. On this trip, and this was one sort of hit the nail on the head, the nail in the coffin for me about gear versus experiences. One of my students was kneeling in the middle of a street growling because she had the wrong lens on again, and she had switched lenses back and forth a few times over a short period of time, and she was really frustrated that she never had the right thing. And that was the aha moment for me about, let's focus on what we really need, making that work for things that may not be 100% optimal. And what that allows me to do is focus on what's going on, and if I understand my gear well enough, and I'm comfortable shooting in crop mode and comfortable shooting at high ISOs, it allows me to still get the shot. That's always important. I'm still going to get the shot, but I'm going to carry less stuff. All of you guys have been in some situation, somewhere, sometime, where you had everything set and you still missed the picture. And if you're honest with yourself and you can realize that, once you've had that conversation with yourself, I'm going to miss a shot. Man, it's a drag, but I'm going to miss it. Carry your gear, understand your camera, and you won't miss as many as you think you do by leaving something home, but you're going to still stay in the moment. You're still going to have that awesome experience wherever you are. If it's sunrise on a safari, or walking the streets of an old city, or scrambling through Indian ruins, or wherever you're going. Remember that your high megapixel camera, all you're shooting on, imagine you're shooting with 24 or 40 megapixel cameras, you have so much resolution that carrying a long lens, unless you're shooting something like a safari, is probably not super critical. If you've got a zoom that goes to 100 or 125 or 140, somewhere in that neighborhood, you can get the shot. And I'll show you some specific examples here in a minute of that. Your cameras are terrific in low light, and understanding that what the web says may not be completely applicable to how and what you shoot, understanding that, realizing that is important too. So let's think about that. Less gear means you're always ready for the shot. You're not switching and goofing with lenses. You are concentrating on grabbing the picture, not so much figuring out what lens I need to add next. So a couple of shots here. It's my Boxer over in the corner. You know, when I showed up at this gym, I didn't have a telephoto lens with me, and switching back and forth because we're shooting sparring and we're shooting in the gym, I didn't have it. So I put my camera into the crop mode. And some have asked, we're shooting in crop mode versus cropping after the fact. The end result is the same. I just prefer to shoot in crop mode so that I can frame my shot accurately and I know exactly what I'm getting. The silhouette shot on the other side, I didn't have a flash. This was probably on the next to last day of our trip. I had decided to leave my flashes home, and I could have lit them up with a flash, but you know what? I don't have it. I'm going to make a silhouette shot instead. For me, it's a much more impactful photograph. You see, these are a lot of times, these are just on-the-fly decisions. You get yourself into a situation that you didn't have the one or two things that you think you need. It makes you a little bit more creative, makes you think a little bit more. How can I make a shot here? my RWB tripod, my repurposed water bottle. I wanted a low angle picture. I had left my lay low plate at home because I was tired of carrying it and had not used it. Found a crushed water bottle and we made it work, and I got the shot. So I didn't have to sacrifice anything. I just had to kind of rethink my process and my workflow. And I bring this up not as a travel picture, but as one of those things about limitations. You know, if you live too far in different places on the internet, you're going to learn something bad about your camera. It's probably noisy at a high ISO, or it can't focus very quick. You need to figure out what those limitations are, that are your limitations, not something that the web has said is a limitation of your gear. This picture was taken at ISO 3200. It's higher than some people are comfortable shooting with, but this picture printed on my wall is 20 by 30, and it's pretty heavily cropped, and it's still a really great shot. So understanding your gear, and for understanding for you what your gear is good at and what your gear maybe is not good at, is important. And don't necessarily take the word of the guy on the web, and that includes me. You have to go find out what those limitations are for yourself. So this minimalist approach to travel photography, you got to know your stuff. You've got to realize that if you're going to shoot in crop mode, how you have to go and prove to yourself that you can do it. And just go shoot some pictures and crop them heavily. Find out where your crop mode is, where your crop button is. On my D750, it's set up as a quick button. I can very quickly crop down pretty tight and still make good sized prints. Do some tests and figure out what your ISO limitations are. In other words, I might think the camera looks perfectly good at up to ISO 6000 or so, and you might think it only looks good to 4000. Figuring out what your acceptable limit is. Just like that, I'm going to skip this next one about picture styles and tweaks. If you want to shoot in black and white, if you want to shoot high contrast, you know, all of your cameras have a setting somewhere deep in a menu about vivid, being able to vivid and landscape, and being able to change contrast and sharpening and things like that. Knowing where those are and making appropriate adjustments can sometimes reduce your workflow after you've come back from a trip. We're going to hit that in a minute too. Just think about what you're shooting for. Do you have to shoot all of these in RAW? Are you shooting for the cover of a magazine, or are you just shooting for a little 4x4 Instagram shot? Those are the things that are, again, important about what you want to carry. Do you want to carry 5 pounds? Do you want to carry 20 pounds? If you're going overseas, are there weight limitations on what you have to carry, or what you're allowed to carry? Think about what you need to take. And man, the other one there is shot discipline. You're going to come back from a trip with 4,000 or 5,000 photos, and it's going to take you 5 months to edit them. Having some shot discipline to help figure out what all you're shooting. So, true confessions. We're going to go back to that photo I showed you guys a few minutes ago. That's my first trip. We took all that stuff. As I've taken that trip 3 times and guided that trip 3 times, I have cut down the gear that I take on each trip, and it's allowed me to be a better instructor. It's allowed me to be more in the moment of what's going on with my students, as well as where we are and what we're doing. And so on this last trip that I took, same trip, same places, I carried one camera with a 24. I shoot with a D750 and a 24 to 120. So again, you'll have an appropriate camera in your brand. And my second camera was my cell phone. And I had an accessory lens for it, and I had a tripod mount for it. That was my second camera. And the cool thing with that is that most of you guys have a great video camera right here in your pocket. So sharing pictures live, sharing pictures fast, if you're shooting mobile as a second camera, is a legitimate option to carrying a second camera. So I'm going to bring this one up, not to brag, but just to kind of show. This picture is one that has, for me, has had a lot of comments. It's been used in a number of different places, and it was published in Backpacker Magazine a couple of years ago. And people will always ask, well, was it raw, and how was it edited, and what you do, and how'd you set it, and what were your settings? Well, it was just a JPEG out of a Sony RX100, and I edited on a mobile phone. So there was no raw, there was very little editing. It was pretty straightforward out of the camera. It was a lucky grab shot from a compositional standpoint. But all of that work about, do I use this, do I use that, how come you don't shoot RAW, or you didn't Lightroom it? No, man, none of that. This was just walking along a trail, snapped off a series of shots, played with it a little bit online, and I was good. And that picture sold to a magazine. So sometimes I think we tend to overwork and overthink what's necessary to create an impactful shot. So now that I have upset the complete apple cart and broken the myth about having to carry 2 lenses and 2 bodies and everything else, we'll talk about mobile options for a minute here. This is the camera that you know. This is the camera that you carry with you every day. And in some ways, I would hazard that most of you know this camera maybe more in depth than you know your system camera. And nothing wrong with that, but I think there are a lot of people in the audience, a lot of people that I run into, they know this while they're struggling with their system camera. So one of the options here is it's the camera that you know. You always have it with you. It's easy to share. It can back up on the fly. It's lightweight. It shoots stills. Mine shoots 4K video. With the exception of maybe some sports and some action, it's a very capable imaging device. You can outfit it with accessories just like your system camera if you want to. So you can get lenses for it. You can get lights for it. You can get mics for it. And so you can blow it up and accessorize it just like you do your system camera to get more out of it. There are tripod adapters. I don't have it up here with me, but I thought I did. But I can mount this to a tripod nice and steady and get good images with it. I can use a gimbal so that my video isn't shaky. I can add an extra mic to it and pop this in here, and it's astounding what a difference in image and sound quality this little microphone does for when I'm shooting video. So I can accessorize it in a lot of different ways and still obviously not get close to what I would be carrying with my system camera. You can even add lenses. Those 2 pictures were taken with $30 add-on lenses, with something we carry in the store. I asked to carry a few months ago, and you might spend $1,000, $1,200, $1,500 on a fisheye lens for your system camera. For $39, I can get a clip-on fisheye to go on my cell phone and create some fun pictures like that, just to give a different perspective and some different abilities, and give you something new and cool to play with and experiment with without a huge outlay of cash. Give me 1 second here, you guys. I've lost my spot. Pull up my thing again. So when you're shooting, this is one of the things you've got to think about, and that is how you're going to back up and archive on the fly if you can. Carrying a laptop for the longest time was the way to go. People have gotten away from laptops and are involved more with tablets and such like that. The downside to being able to back up mobile and back up on the fly is capacity, because if you're backing everything up to your cell phone or your iPad, you're going to fill up the memory of that really, really quickly. So these are 2 things that I like a lot. One is called Narbox, the other one is from Western Digital, and it's just a My Passport wireless hard drive. And basically how they work is you simply plug your card into it, it copies onto that hard drive, and then that can function as a Wi-Fi spot so that you can then edit on your laptop, on your phone, or on your tablet without filling up that device. They are super cool. Now we don't carry them at Cardinal, but it is a terrific piece. I've got one of my customers about a year ago actually put me on to using the Western Digital piece. Can you grab that from me, buddy, please? Put me onto the Western Digital piece, and he travels a ton, and backs up all of his pictures on the fly, edits them through Lightroom Mobile, and then saves them back onto the drive. And again, speed, size, access, and safety, because everything is archived as you go. That Western Digital, I think, will go up to 2 terabytes, and I think they recently introduced a 4 terabyte version of it. So they are terrific for travel and backup without having to carry a lot of extra stuff with you. Another option to back up, if you don't want to carry something like that, is to use multiple memory cards. So my cameras have 2 memory card slots, and so in my camera I simply set up, I have one large card, it's in my number 2 slot, and that 64 gigabyte card everything goes to, and then I have a small card that I will replace out every 2 or 3 days depending on the on what my trip is. So maybe that card 1 has an 8 gigabyte card, and every 2 or 3 days I take that card out and pack it away where it's safe, and then put it in a new card. So I have a fresh card every few days, but everything is also being backed up to that 64 gig, to that backup card, so to speak. So I've got my originals and I have my backup, and everything is safe that way. And then if I have access to something like the Western Digital, I can also back them up that way. Not everybody has 2 card slots, so if you only have 1 card, it's kind of the same thing. I'm just going to buy a card for every 2 or 3 days of my trip. The reason I say 2 or 3 days, you have to know for yourself what kind of shot discipline you have. If you shoot 200 pictures a day or 1,000 pictures a day, buy an appropriate sized card. But even if it's not full, take it out after 2 days or after 3 days and pack it away and put in a fresh card. That way you're not at the mercy of a bad card or a stolen camera or a lost camera. All of your pictures for at least a short period of time will be safe and put away. If by chance you get to the end of your trip or the end of your day and you have run out and you filled up a card, you're going to have some backup. But it's a key thing about just put them away, and then you know those 3 pictures or those 3 days are going to be safe and sound, not at risk of being lost. Just some other quick gear tips and things like that. Think about a plug adapter. You know, you go overseas and you're going to have to worry about different kinds of plugs. Take an adapter with you. That you do not have to worry about voltage adapters. All of the chargers that we get now in our gear are rated to go from 110 to 240 volts. So you don't have to worry about the voltage. You just have to worry about changing the shape of your plug, and you're good to go. My preference is for a sling strap, like the pictures that you see there on the side, where the camera wears down your side. Much more comfortable to wear over the course of a day. My camera's always on my hip. I know where it's at. It's not banging against my chest. Super comfortable. My preference is the Peak Design straps because I like their system of carrying stuff. Black Rapid also makes a really good strap, and we carry both of those. My favorite all-time Hall of Fame bag for travel is the Mindshift Photocross bag. That second bag, it's a sling, so if it's only one strap, I don't have to take it off to get into it. I can pull it around to the front, can dig into it and grab out the gear that I need and close it back up. It never has to come off, so I have the advantages of a backpack with the advantage of never having to remove it. Comes in a couple of different sizes. For what it's worth, I carry the middle one, the 13. The Photocross 13 will hold a full-size body, depending how tightly you pack it, 2 or 3 lenses and a flash, as well as an outside pocket and a raincoat. Monster bag. I will never ever get rid of mine, and it is, for me, it's the Hall of Fame bag. It's terrific. Gotta have spare batteries, 1 or 2. If you are a power geek like me who has this horrible fear of running out of power, I carry 7. It's way too many. 2 or 3 is enough for most of you. But make sure you've got spare batteries with you all the time. I told you about my extension cord and power strip. That's a given. Dual charger. Now we sell a small dual charger from ProMaster that I picked up. It is super awesome. It is about this big. Can charge 2 batteries at once. Powers by USB, and they're inexpensive. They're about $30, and they're available for most cameras, whether it's from us or someone else. But a dual charger is a great piece. Got to be able to clean your gear on the fly, so obviously, you know, a brush and a blower, some lens cloths is important to make sure that you carry, and a garbage bag. There's always going to be some non-photography piece of gear. Garbage bag, because it's going to rain, and you won't be ready for it. And it's especially going to rain the day you're not ready for it. That lives in my bag too. Last little touch about gear, you guys, and this is a lot of repetition over some of the things that I've been saying, but it's important, so that's why we're hitting it multiple times. Less to carry. You're not going to get gate checked when you go to get on the plane. You're not going to be tired at the end of the day. You're not going to go back to your hotel and eat a handful of aspirin because you've been carrying 25 pounds of gear around all day. So that minimalist approach works well for that. It lets you focus on shooting and focusing on experiences, not tracking down your gear, not switching lenses at an inappropriate or wrong time, not missing a shot because you're fiddling with gear. You're focusing on what's going on. You're more into the moment, so to speak. I think the more that you learn how to make it work, it's going to make you a better photographer, and it's going to make you understand your equipment better. Before I did this, I was of the mind that ISO 2000 was insanely high and that my camera couldn't do a very good job at that high. And I can tell you, I've shot at 2000 and 4000 and 6000. I have a 40-inch print hanging above my sofa downstairs that was shot at ISO 2000, and it looks great. And so making it work, you'll understand your gear. It'll make you a more skilled photographer. Know what your audience is and know what you're shooting for. Are you shooting for Time Magazine? If you're shooting for Instagram, you're just shooting for this. Or if you're shooting for 100 likes. All of these kind of questions will help you maybe pare down your equipment, make you realize it's okay to leave something at home every now and then. Do some testing and really critiquing of your own work and your own workflow and your own habits, and you're going to find out that what the web says you need, or what the web says your camera is good at, or what the web says your camera is bad at, may be completely wrong for you and how you shoot and what you shoot and how you prefer to shoot. So just do a little bit of deep dive thinking and critiquing of your own stuff. And remember, obviously, that you're going to pack differently for a different kind of trip. What I take to Arizona or what I take to Havana would be completely different from what I take to Morocco or Africa on a safari or something like that. So you're going someplace cool for the first time. You've never been there. You don't know what you're looking into. You don't know what you're getting into. Here's some great sources to kind of give you a little bit of insight about where to go and what to shoot. 500px is a super cool website. You can search by city, by place, and it'll show you the cool places. Instagram obviously is a good choice. Google Photos is a good choice. A lot of cool places for things like that. That's a pretty basic information. Don't forget about the people. Don't forget about the food. Don't forget about the music. All of those things are going to contribute to your experience on this trip, wherever it might be. So photograph those things, not just the pretty backgrounds, but look at the cool people, look at the cool buildings. Food, obviously, is a huge thing with Instagram. So look at those things. You're telling a story. You're not just taking pictures. And if you go into this adventure, go into this trip, wherever you're off to, that you want to tell a story, your photographs will be better. You will shoot different things, and you will come back with a more complete record of where you were and what you did and who you saw and what you ate. And that is the whole. That's the whole goal, is to tell the story, not just take a picture. This is something I have run into for many, many years, and continues to happen. You come into my store and I set you up with some new gear, and maybe we've taken a class or two, and because you're going on an adventure, you're going to Iceland for the first time, and you come back and I get something like this. Our trip was great. I can't wait to show you the pictures, but I have to edit them first. And if I had $1 for each time that I've had this happen, I'd have, I don't know, $40 or $50 at least. The idea is to minimize your post-processing, minimize your editing, carrying the right gear, making the right decision, and accepting some limitations. And that's not that I don't shoot 3,000 pictures on a trip. Maybe I do. But you got to edit them, and you got to cull them out, and you got to back them up. There's a whole ton more work that's going on after you have come back from this trip. So, take a class and learn your gear. We want you to learn your gear so you don't have to shoot 4,000 pictures to get 1,000 good ones. Because you're going to have to delete those 4,000 at some point. You're going to have to go through them all. I'd rather you come back with a lot of great images than a lot of images. Using your in-camera tweaks are going to help you do some of that stuff by picking the appropriate picture style, or maybe shooting in HDR, things like that, again, so that you are capturing a great shot, not capturing 10 great shots, 10 mediocre shots to find one good one. We're going to take 2 or 3 to find a really awesome one. That's my goal. Think about if you want to shoot RAW versus JPEG, and I realize that you guys probably just going to come at me with torches and pitchforks when I tell you I rarely ever shoot RAW. I almost always shoot JPEG. what's appropriate for you. I'm going to kind of leave it at that. If you prefer RAW and you prefer Lightroom and you love doing that, rock it out. It's not for me. It's extra work for you. I have friends who like that, and we are still friends. But it's not for me, you guys. And I'm confident in the work that I put out, and I'm confident that what I show you is really good stuff. And so I think you can live without having to shoot in RAW. And you got time on your hands, maybe go experiment for yourself and learn that. Figure out who you're shooting for and who your audience is. We've already talked about that. And mobile editing. Mobile editing is the deal. I love mobile edits because it makes my life simple. This is, if you have come to my classes in Charlotte or we've spent more than 5 minutes together about editing, you know that I am a huge fan of this program right here. It's called Snapseed. One great feature is that it is free. The second great feature is it's non-destructive, so any edits that I make with it are going to be saved separately from the original. I can always go back to my original and massage it some more. It is super intuitive. It basically is sliders. If you guys haven't downloaded it already, grab your phone or grab your tablet, install Snapseed, play around with it. I can promise you in about 10 minutes you're going to feel super comfortable with it. I'm going to leave it at that because I can go for days on how awesome I think this is. Backs up to the cloud if your devices are set up. The only downside to it is it is only mobile. It's not going to work on your laptop or your desktop. So it's only going to work on your phone or your tablet. I love using it on my tablet because I've got a big screen to work with and a stylus to play with, and it works terrific. That's my on-the-fly editing choice. You also need to archive your stuff because while you're traveling, things can happen, things can get lost. You want to be able to archive it. And so if your mobile devices are not currently set up to archive automatically, might not be a bad idea. Cloud is the way to go because if you're carrying a laptop or on a trip, it's not a drag. Almost everybody in the audience is going to have either Amazon or Google or Windows OneDrive. These, as far as I know, the information up here is still accurate. If you have Amazon Prime, you've got unlimited storage for free. Google Photos is going to give you a lot. Now there are some limitations about sizes and videos versus stills. If you choose to use any or all of these, double check because the criteria and things change with these frequently. Some have turned into subscription basis, but these are accurate as of a few months ago. There are privacy concerns that I would save those for questions afterwards if you guys want to get into that. I am not overly concerned about Google owning my photos. I'm not concerned about if Google gets hacked. It's probably going to happen one time or another if it hasn't already. What the cloud allows you to do is it's one more place to put your images where they're safe, so you're not worried about a laptop crash or an external crash. I love the cloud for backing up. My phone doesn't fill up, and I can find my photos pretty much any time by accessing. I use Google, so by accessing Google Photos, I can pull up any photo that I need to find. So if you don't already have Google Photos, it's really quick and simple how to set it up. You open up the app, you log into your Google account. Up on the top right, you have those 3 little bars. You hit that, go to settings, and turn on backup and sync. Choose on your device. My Pixel is set up to back up all of the folders. You have options here about what sizes you want to do, where you want to put them on your device, any folders and things like that. But what's awesome is now anything that I send to this or that I take with this are going to automatically back up to Google Photos. And then I can simply hit my Photos app and pull them up, so I don't have to keep them here. If I am traveling overseas, I can back them up to a tablet. On my tablet, I have a 256 gig card in my tablet, so I just back up to my tablet, and I'm happy with that. The other awesome thing that this does is it allows you to search. So if I'm looking for pictures of cars in Google Photos, I just type in the word cars, and all of the pictures that are in my Google Photos account that have a car, or in some cases were taken with a car, it will find. It is pretty awesome. If I type in Arizona, pictures that are tagged with Arizona will pop up. There is some voodoo and black magic that involves with this because the photos that you might put there maybe weren't uploaded to Google when you were in Arizona, but Google knows that this picture was taken in Arizona. There are face searches available. It stores everything chronologically, so in terms of searching for by time, by place, super easy to search and find images rather than going into your hard drive and trying to remember what folder and when. Google Photos makes it super simple. And again, Amazon and Windows offer similar products. I tend to be, I'm certainly biased towards the Google product because it's easy. All of the devices in our house are set up to automatically back up and sync to a family Gmail account, so that whether it's my son's phone, my SLR, my computer, everything will automatically back up there. Lastly, just a couple of other considerations and some final thoughts. You think about cultural concerns. If you're going to a foreign country, you're going overseas, or even, to be quite frank, downtown anywhere, ask before taking pictures of people. Some people aren't going to be comfortable with it. I learned a very hard lesson on my very first trip overseas, where I told someone I didn't have any money and I had about a month's worth of income in my pocket, but I didn't have any small bills. So if I'm going, man, I learned now I keep some small change, some small bills in my pocket. If there's a street performer or a dance troupe or someone who's doing their thing, trying to earn a few bucks, it's only cool to pay them for that time. Be ready in the street, man. This sounds really silly. Look both ways before you cross the street. You don't know what's going on. Keep your head on a swivel so you know what's happening. One, from a personal safety standpoint. Two, from you don't want to miss a cool shot that you may miss otherwise. So don't keep your head down. Keep your head up and keep looking around. Be considerate of your non-travel people. My wife shoots pictures, my son shoots pictures, but not to the same level that I do. So, be considerate of what they're doing. If you're taking a photography trip and you're with 7 other photographers, maybe that's a different story. I love early morning time. I'll get up early before my workshop is ready to roll, and I'll go out and take pictures on my own. That's my time. I love sunrises. I love early morning, and I don't sleep a lot, so that's my time. And then after that, I'm with my crew. And then be different. Those search ideas I gave you earlier about where to go and everything like that. 500px and Google Photos and such. That's going to get you there. But the downside to that is you're going to take the same pictures that everybody else took. So take some extra time and scout out. Maybe you're going to shoot it with a different lens. Maybe you're going to shoot it later in the day, or you're going to shoot it earlier in the day, or you're going to purposely avoid that spot. I once did an experiment, and I Googled pictures of Half Dome. That's why Half Dome's up here. And about the first 30 or 40 pictures that came up of Half Dome in my Google image search, they were all virtually the same photo. Not the same picture, but they were all virtually taken from the same spot at about the same time of day. So if you want to make something different and cool and creative in yours, look for those places, but then branch out. Get a little bit uncomfortable and go somewhere else. If you've been here before, you know how to reach me. There's all of the different ways that you can find me. Actually, don't use theanthonyultra.com. That website's gone now. It's in the middle of being rebuilt, so stay away from that. You can find me at Cardinal Camera Charlotte on Facebook. My personal page is Studio A Photography Charlotte. If you want to follow me on Instagram, my address is there. That's my cell phone number because our store is closed. If you need me, you can text me at that number. I can't promise I'll reach out quickly. I'll do the best I can. I prefer you reach out to me by email at either of those 2 email addresses or through Facebook Messenger, and I'll be happy to answer questions there, give you some guidance, help you out. Really quick, I have a couple of other things I want to show. Because our stores are closed currently because of the lockdown orders in place across the country, if you want to make an order, you want to place an order, you are in a position where you need to buy some new gear because you're going crazy and you shot with everything you have, if you call that number on top, 215-368-6804, someone will be there who can take your order. We do have inventory in our store in Pennsylvania, and we can ship gear to you. We are shipping free, and we are shipping without sales tax for any orders that you place between now and the end of the month. When you call, you're actually going to get a person, not a call center. They'll take your information, they'll take your order, and they'll get it shipped out to you as quickly as possible. Starting today through the end of the month, if you want to purchase any Think Tank products, and that Mindshift bag is a Think Tank bag, that Mindshift Cross that I told you about, 25% off on all Think Tank orders that you place the next couple of weeks. Don't forget, we have Tamron Thursday each of the next 3 Thursdays at 2 o'clock. These are hosted by myself and representatives from Tamron. If you go to the Tamron website, tamron-usa.com, scroll down the page and click on local events, you'll see the information there for each of the classes and webinars that we have. There are registrations required for each one. If you go to that website address, click on it, you'll find it with no problem, and you can register for those. We'll be back on Thursday. Our next one Thursday is on Night Photography, Mysteries in Night Sky, with my friend Ken Hubbard, who is an outstanding photographer and instructor who works with Tamron. Sigma just announced a contest called Shot at Home, and it's about documenting your time during the COVID lockdown. And if you go to sigmaphoto.com, scroll down and look for Shop at Home, you can find information about that. One of the ways to kind of keep you going and keep you organized right now. Some other great sources, and again, I'm not paid for these. These are things that I know and believe in. I work with myself. I don't work for either of these companies, but kelby1.com is perhaps one of the best resources for education and things like that. They've unlocked a lot of their information that's available free. If you go to that website, there's a ton of stuff there that will give you some challenges, give you some information, maybe make you think, make you into a better photographer. And then On1 is a terrific Lightroom option. I use it a lot. I don't edit a lot, but when I do, On1 is one of the things that I use, and they're doing a spring sale right now. Depending on the product package that you pick, you can get their software for up to half off right now. And that's the end of the presentation. So if you guys hang with me for 1 second, I'm going to grab a sip, and we're going to answer some questions. I've got some stuff come through on Messenger. So let me scroll up and see what I can find here. You guys are welcome to hit me up with any more questions. Just hit your Facebook Messenger button and type them in, and I will go through and answer them for you. So first one, Adora, the exact tripod I mentioned earlier. Okay, so there's a couple of tripods that I like a lot. The Lalo plate, if you have seen a platypod, and you can Google that, a platypod, it's just a small, flat aluminum. Can you grab my platypod, my Lalo? I think it's right over in the corner. I'm going to grab one. I'll show you guys what it is. So, baby, over here. Oh. So the platypod and the Lalo, the platypod was the original. The Lalo is a smaller version. Second bin over. There you go. Thank you, bud. There's producer Quint. Gave him something to do. Right. So this is a Lalo plate. This is made by Glide Gear, and it is similar to another device called a platypod. And to use a Lalo plate or a platypod, what you'll do is, this is the plate. Your tripod head will screw in here, so this will hold my camera pretty securely. I was shocked at how secure this is, and if you're shooting down low, that picture that was earlier in the presentation with the crushed water bottle, getting down low for things like cathedrals and museums and landscapes. It also, you can mount, I use this sometimes to put a light on too, if I'm using multiple flashes at an event or a venue, something like that. So it's a pretty cool thing. The Lalo runs about $50, and we do sell them at Cardinal. The platypod runs over $100. We don't currently sell it, but they work equally well. It's just a piece of aluminum that you can mount a head to. Adora, the other tripod that I like a lot for travel, was painful for me to admit it, because again, if you've seen any of my things, if A is good enough, get the next one. My current travel tripod of choice, I would show it to you, but the webcam's mounted to it. It's from ProMaster. It's called an XCM525. It will go up to about mid-height on chest. It'll go all the way flat to the ground. It is sufficient to hold a full-frame camera with a mid-range zoom. So I would not mount my 70-200 on it with my camera, but something like a 24-70 or a 24-120 or any of the small primes, I am completely comfortable with it. It's a terrific tripod, and it's not terribly expensive. It's about $150 in aluminum. So it's a fun tripod. I like it a lot. Keith is asking how to toggle from full frame to crop mode. It depends on your camera, Keith. Some cameras, it's going to be a menu option that you have to turn on. Some cameras, you can program a button It's going to be dependent on what camera you have, if you can switch from full to crop. And again, if you can't, just shoot it with the best you can and crop after the fact. Like I said, my personal preference is to shoot in crop so that I know exactly what I'm getting. On a D750, I can program a number of different buttons, and I have one crop where I can just press the button, turn a dial, and go right into crop mode. So that's it all depends on what camera you have for that. Kelly asked, if I took only one lens, what would it be for city trips? I tell you what, I love my 24 to 120 for stuff like that, and that's what I carried on that last trip that I was showing you. For some people and for some things, it is not wide enough. But again, going back to that thing where I was talking about making do with what you have. So if 24 millimeters isn't wide enough,